So today we're going to talk about how to make the most of the IELTS online resource library. We're going to look at how you can log on, what you can see on the platform, and we're going to give you some tips and ideas for self-study. So let's start with the what do you need to consider when you're studying alone? So most of you will be studying remotely or studying by yourself. The first thing you could do would be to find a buddy, so somebody you can study with. If you have any friends or family who are also preparing for the IELTS exam, then it's great to study together. But if that's not the situation, then there are a few things that you need to consider for your independent study. First of all, think about when are you going to study. Do you find that you study better in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening? Think about when is a good time for you to study and set aside a specific amount of time, either each week or each day, for you to practice your English and practice preparation for IELTS. Something else to consider is where to study. Now, the great thing about online and mobile learning is you can study anywhere. But in order to be effective in your study, it's important to have a good learning environment. So think about when you're going to study and where you're going to study so that you can be the most productive. And the other thing to consider is how are you going to study? How are you going to organize your time? What are you going to do, and how are you going to organize your notes and ideas? So throughout this session, we're going to give you some ideas and tips on the different parts of the test and how to prepare and study by yourself. So let's have a quick look at the online IELTS library and have a look at what you can do on the library. So this is the home page. This is the page that you'll get each time that you log in to the online library. As you can see, there are 4 sections. We have the guided section in red, the solo section in green, the mock section in blue, and the tracker section in yellow. Now, the first place to start is the guided section. The guided section is a clever section. So this is the section that gives you practice activities on each part of the exam, so reading, writing, listening and speaking, and it uses a specific algorithm and it adapts to your ability and your performance. So for example, if you've done a reading activity and you've done particularly well, it will give you an activity which is slightly more difficult. So the guided section is a really great place to start. In this section, you can also see short videos, and it gives you lots of information about the test and what's expected of you in the test. In the solo section, you can focus on different parts of the exam, and you can also focus on specific question types or task types. So, for example, a lot of students in the reading exam will often struggle with or need more practice in true, false, not given questions. So if this is the case, you can go to the solo section and specifically practice those types of questions. The mock section has practice exams. These are full practice exams that you should try to do under exam conditions. So sit down and do a whole exam, either in sections, first of all the reading, then the listening, then the writing, or sit down and do a whole test. Now, it's a good idea when you take a course with SLC to listen to your teacher, as they'll give you recommendations as to which stage of the course you should do mock exams. The tracker section in yellow is the section that gives you information on your progress and information on how you're getting on with each of the different task types. And this is what we're going to have a look at next. So using the tracker section, this is an area where you can check your progress. So as we can see, you have information about the type of task that you've done, the paper that you've done, and also the score that you've got. So, for example, this particular student has done a writing task, they've done a listening task, and they've done a reading task. Unfortunately, they've scored 0 on all of them, but I'm sure that won't be the case for you. Now, it's a good idea to use this section to help you to decide what to study. So, you once you've done some tasks, they will all appear in the tracker section. And as we can see, the recommendation says choose a task to see your feedback. So, for example, if you have done a true, false, not given activity, and you have a look and the score is not as high as you think it should be, you can click the review button. Once you click the review button, it will take you back to that particular task and activity, and it will show you the task and your answers. Now, it's a really good idea to go back and check how you got on with these different types of activities, as it can help you to plan what to study next. So you go back and have a look at true, false, not given. You check the answers. Make sure you click to get feedback on each of the answers so you can see which answers you got right and where you went wrong. And then at some point you can click the redo section. This will take you back to the activity and will ask you to do it again. So this is a great way for you to review how you're getting on and really focus your study into the areas that you need to improve on, or areas that you find you're already strong in and want a little bit more practice. Next, we're going to have a look at the reading section. So there are various different places to find reading on the online IELTS library. You can find them in the guided section, the solo section, and also some practice tests in the mock section. Now, when you do a reading exercise, make sure you check your answers. After you submit your answers, you can click on feedback and it will give you information on your answer and the correct answer. So it's always good to check those correct answers to find out which questions you got right and which areas you can improve on. Now, after you've completed an activity and you've checked your answers, what's the next step? So there are more things that you can do with this reading text. So if we have a look at this one, it's alternative farming methods in Oregon. And I've circled some different words here. So we've got two words in blue, pesticides and livestock. We've got one phrase in green, have reduced, and we've got two phrases in purple, while and 2/3. Let's look at the blue phrases first. So I'd like you to use the chat box and share your ideas. Why do you think I've circled these blue words? Okay, so we've got one answer so far. So it's another term of a certain word. We've also got, it could be the topic of the sentence. Okay, now if we're thinking particularly about further study, we're thinking about how to make the most out of a reading text. There are different words that you can take from the text for different purposes. So the blue words I've taken are a specific vocabulary that perhaps I didn't know before. So we've got these two words here, which are pesticides and livestock. These are new words or new vocabulary about this topic, which is agriculture, that perhaps I didn't know before and I think might be important in the IELTS exam. So you can circle words and find new vocabulary in a reading text. Now let's have a look at the green phrase. Type your ideas into the chat box. Why do you think I've circled the green phrase? Blue is vocabulary. What about green? Yes, good. So our first answer is grammar, exactly. So we've also got quantity, so grammar, this is the reason. So this is a present perfect verb, and I've circled it because it's always useful to see how grammar is used in context. So I can look at this and realize that it's present perfect, have a look at why it's used here, and make a note in your grammar or in your notebook, and think about how you can then use it in your own writing. Now let's have a look at purple. So we've got two purple words, while and 2/3. Type your ideas into the chat box. What's the reason that I've circled these purple words? Okay, so the reason I've circled these words, they could be adverbs, they could be comparisons, it could be descriptions. The main reason that I've circled them is because that I think that they would be useful for writing. So these are phrases that you can use in your own writing in the writing section of the exam. So while you can use in both task 1 and task 2, and 2/3 is particularly a phrase that would be useful in writing task 1. So there are different things that you can do with the reading text, which are not only practicing reading activities. Once you've done the IELTS reading practice activities, you can then go back to the text, review, and it really exploit the text and get a lot out of each of these different texts. So something else that we can have a look at on the online platform is listening. So where can you find listening activities? You can find listening activities on both the guided section and the solo sections and the mock sections. So it's all throughout the platform, throughout the library. Now, as with reading in the solo section, you can really focus your listening practice if you find that there are particular tasks that you find challenging or you think you need more practice in, then you can go to the solo section and really focus your study, or you can focus on the different sections 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, the important thing in listening is to make sure you know how to check your answers. So once you've finished the listening task and you've submitted your answers, you can review your answers. And for each question, it will give you the answer that you've given and then the correct answer. Now, when you click on the answer below, you can get feedback. So make sure you click, get feedback, and understand how this answer is correct, and if necessary, listen back and check that you've understood. On to writing. So writing is one of the areas that a lot of students like to have practice in, and it's a really important area in your IELTS exam. Now, for your writing, there are various places to practice in the library. In the guided section, there's lots of useful videos about understanding the exam, the writing exam, and also guidance on what the examiners are looking for. When you submit a writing answer, after you finish, you'll be able to review your answer, and you'll also be able to review a model answer. So here's an example of a model answer. In the IELTS, on the library, once you've submitted your answer, above the model answer, there will be your own answer to this question. You'll be able to see the task at the top, your own answer, and then some model answers. Now, something that's really useful to do is to do a comparative analysis between your answer and the model answer that's given. And the model answers that we have on the IELTS library have different band scores. So if we look to the top left, we can see that there are example answers for band score 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, or 8 to 9. So it's a really good idea to choose. Have a look at all of them, actually. If you have a look at all of the different levels of answers and compare them with your own, you can get a good idea of how you're doing with your own answers and compare and see which one you think it's similar to. Now, as we can see, this particular person has got a band 7 for this task. Now, I'd like you to write in the chat box again, and please have a quick read through the answer and tell me, is it a task 1 or a task 2 answer? Yep, it's a task 1. And what type of task 1 is it? It's a process. So we've got a very clear introduction to the answer here that tells us that it's describing a process. Now, Each time you choose the answer you want to look at, you'll have some general comments in the left-hand corner in green. Now, if we notice, we've got some circles in the top right-hand corner. We have TA, CC, LR, and GR. Can anyone tell me in the chat box what are these letters? What do they stand for, or what do they represent? So I'm not getting any answers. I'm not sure if everyone's gone a bit quiet or if you're not sure. So these are the 4 criteria that you are marked on in your writing exam. So for each section, for task 1 and task 2, you'll be marked on 4 different criteria. The first one is task achievement, how well you answer the question. CC is coherence and cohesion, how well connected your answer is. LR is lexical range and accuracy, so this is vocabulary, and GR is grammatical range and accuracy. So for each model answer, you can choose first of all the band score that you want to look at, and then you can also choose which area of the marking criteria you want to focus on. So if we look at this one, we're focusing on task achievement. So the comments in the green column on the left-hand side will be about task achievement. When you tick on coherence and cohesion, you will have different comments on the left-hand side and perhaps different parts of the text underlined to help explain the answers and the marking. So it's a really good idea to use the model answers to assess your own writing and see where you can improve and how you can really push your answer up to a band 7 or 8. The next thing we're going to have a look at today is speaking. Now, speaking, if you're doing independent study, speaking can sometimes be challenging if you're on your own and you don't have an IELTS buddy, but it's really, really important that you get as much practice as possible. So we've got some tips to help you study and practice speaking, even if you're on your own. So on the online library, there are practice tests. So you can either choose a full practice test or you can focus on different parts of the test, either part 1, 2, or 3. As we can see here, we've got a part 2 and 3. So once you find your practice tests, what can you do? So one thing you can do in your preparation is to prepare your answers. So by prepare your answers, we mean write out an answer. So for example, in part 2, this topic is describe your favorite film or television program, and you need to talk for 1 to 2 minutes. So spend some time and write out your answer and then practice saying it. This will give you the chance to think about vocabulary that would be useful related to the topic and how to organize your ideas. Something else you can do is to record yourself. Now, this is often not something that people enjoy doing. Some people do, but quite often people don't really like to do it. But it's a really helpful way for you to practice speaking, get used to speaking for 2 minutes, and get used to answering the questions and anticipating how much time you need to talk. So there are different ways to record yourself. You can use an app on your phone, or there are some online websites that you can use as well. Vocaroo, which we'll put in the chat box at the end, is a very easy to use online recording program. So that's a great one to use. Once you've recorded yourself, then you should listen back to your answer and assess yourself. So for example, with this activity here, you need to describe your favorite film or television program, and you've got 4 points that you need to talk about. So when you listen back, you should listen to see if you've answered the question, if you've answered all parts on the card, and if you've used a good variety of vocabulary. Once you've recorded yourself, listened to yourself, something else you can do with that recording is to transcribe it. So by transcribing, it means writing down every single word exactly as you hear it, without correcting anything. So this is a good activity for you to hear and pinpoint any areas that you're answering well or any areas that you need to improve. the other thing that you should bear in mind is to be organized. So each test has a number. So if you answer a speaking test question, make sure you write down the test number so that you can then either come back to it and review the test at a later date or redo the test later and see if you notice any differences. So from all of these different sections on the online library, vocabulary is really important, and it's really important in the exam. So when you're recording vocabulary, it's a good idea to think about what you're going to record. So for example, in our text we've just looked at about agriculture. We had words specific to agriculture. So look at new words to write down. You also need to think about how to record the information and where to record the information. So it's a good idea to keep a vocabulary notebook. You could either have a paper notebook or you could keep notes on your phone. And you need to think about how to record it. Do you just write a list of words with the translation, or is it a good idea to make an organized table to write down new words? So this is one way that you can organize your vocabulary. You can organize it into a table or something similar. So you can have a word or a phrase that's new that you found. Find a definition, use a dictionary. Cambridge and Macmillan have good online dictionaries that are free. Write down an example sentence. Now this is really important to help you understand how the word is used in a sentence, and the more personalized this sentence is, the easier it will be for you to remember. The last column is also synonyms or related words. Those of you who've been studying IELTS will know that synonyms and parallel phrases and related words are useful all throughout the IELTS exam to help you understand and answer each of the questions. So once you've got this vocabulary notebook and you've recorded some vocabulary, what next? What can you do to help commit these words into your long-term memory? So, in order to learn a word, you need to first of all find the word, check the word, write it down, and then practice using it. So use it in your essays when you're writing and doing practice writing, or use it in your speaking practice. Make a list perhaps of words that you think would be useful to use, and you can have them on cards as a memory aid to help you integrate the new words into your speaking and writing practice. So our last topic for today is our tips for self-study. So first of all, make sure you're organized. Organize your time and organize your self-study. By organizing your time, think about what time of day is a good time for you to study, and perhaps think about organizing a study timetable to help you decide what areas to study and when. Make sure you have a good learning environment when you sit down to study or use the online platform. Use the library to find your strengths and weaknesses and work out where to focus your study. From those strengths and weaknesses, you can plan what to do next, and always make sure that you make notes and look at them and review them. So that's our presentation for today, and we're going to open up the question and answer section. So if you've got some questions, then you can click on the Q&A section in your taskbar at the top, and we'll answer your questions. Okay, so we're going to go to a question which is in the chat box, and it's from Geraldine, who's asking about when to write, how to edit your work. So I think that you're asking about erasing words in the exam. So the first thing to notice in the writing exam is that in the writing exam, you can either use a pen or a pencil. If you use a pencil, then you can use the rubber to erase any of your answers and then write over it, rather than using a pen, which, as Geraldine has mentioned, can sometimes make your writing look a bit messy, or it's difficult for the examiner to understand. The first thing that you need to remember is you need to make sure that all of your ideas are easy for the examiner to read and easy for the examiner to understand. So using a pencil could help with this problem. The other thing to bear in mind is that in order to write your answer in the exam, it's a good idea to plan. So by planning your answer, you should have a good idea of what you're going to write, and then it should help you in erasing too many words. There's a few of you who are asking how you can get access to the online courses. So that is something that we can send you information about after the webinar. So we will give you information about how to get access to the online courses and what the classes are going to be like, which is another question that we've had in. So we'll send you some information afterwards. And we have another question about the speaking, how to answer speaking test part 2. So this is quite a wide question. First of all, you need to make sure that you answer all of the questions on the task card. So the examiner will give you a booklet, and you will have a task in the booklet, and there will be 4 parts that you need to answer. You have 3 bullet points and 1 point at the end, which is usually an explain or describe. So first of all, make sure you answer all of the parts of the task card. Make sure that you give reasons and examples with your answer, and make sure that you link your ideas well. One of the things the examiner looks for in the speaking exam is how you link your ideas and how you organize your answer. So those are a few tips for you for answering speaking test part 2. One more thing to add in terms of self-study, it's a good idea to time yourself when you're answering a task 2. So get a timer on your phone or a watch and time yourself answering the question, and you should aim to get to 2 minutes. In the exam, if it goes over 2 minutes, then the examiner might stop you, but that's nothing to worry about. So make sure you answer all parts of the task, make sure you use linking phrases, and practice speaking for 2 minutes. Okay, so those are all the questions we've had through so far. So the next question is from Geraldine, and the question is, if I miss one topic in the speaking exam, so I presume you mean speaking exam part 2, will you lose points? The answer to that one is maybe. Which is a slightly frustrating answer. So on the cue card, yeah, so part 2 on the cue card. You won't directly lose points for not answering every single part of the card. However, if you do miss one of the questions on the cue card, it might mean that your answer is too short, which shows that you're not able to fully develop a topic and give reasons and examples for your answer. So while missing a topic won't directly lead you to having a lower score, you won't be deducted points, it will affect your score in some of the areas that you're graded on, particularly fluency and coherence in the speaking exam. Okay, if we've got any more questions, we've got a couple of minutes. Okay, so that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you very much for coming, and we hope you found it useful. And thank you very much for your questions. And we look forward to seeing you again for our next webinar.